Welcome back to my Sandersville Railroad, everyone. Today I'm going to show you how I set up the decoder CVs so that my locomotives operate slow and like the real thing. So sit back and enjoy, and please like and subscribe. I just got a new Soundtracks decoder in the mail. I'm not a big fan of ESU, which is what came in this locomotive. So I'm going to switch it out. I've never been under the hood. I just know that it had a 21 pin in it. So it should be relatively straightforward. And then I'm hoping that I can show you how I go about setting CVs, at least for Tsunami, that make them work real good, at least as far as I'm concerned. So if you'll stick around, I will show you real quick how to switch this 21 pin out. I've never been under the hood of this, so I wanted to take a look at it. And then we'll get to showing you how I do my CVs. Shell off. And if you saw my other video about updating these couplers to make the corners easy, I was bragging on these coupler pockets. They're phenomenal. I wish everybody had pockets like this. Okay. Always got to be real careful about this. You don't want to bend the tines. Plenty of room to put in a current keeper should I need to. Straightforward, easy peasy. Just line it up, push it in. Now we button this back up. Okay, we've got it buttoned back up. Let's head out to the layout and set up some CVs. All right, we made it to the layout. We've got the new decoder in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how I set up the individual CVs for my locomotives to operate on the My Sandersville Railroad layout. I want all my locomotives to do the same things with the same buttons, with the same speed controls. That's why I keep all of my locomotives with the same type of a decoder. I like Tsunami. They're easy to work with, they're easy to program, and that's what I run. So this particular video will be about how to address the specific CVs for a Tsunami so that you can operate your engines a little bit more realistic. Don't know if my settings are going to work for you, but I'm at least going to walk you through how to make the settings set up. Okay? So what I've got here is a spreadsheet. This happens to be a Google sheet, but it's the spreadsheet nonetheless of what I keep up with so that I know how to set my particular locomotives. Now, I will say that I've already set the long address for this engine. This engine's long address is 3654, which is what the engine number is. Then what I've done is I've walked through and the CVs that I've been able to identify through watching hours of videos, and George over there on their YouTube page does a great job of explaining it. I'm going to try to consolidate all of his videos that I've watched into this. Now, I'm not going to go through the digital exhaust, or excuse me, the dynamic digital exhaust. George's videos are so good on that. I highly recommend you jump over to his page to see how to do the dynamic digital exhaust. So what we'll do, I currently run my layout with an NCE power cat, and it's pretty simple to operate. I like the way it works. It does what I need it to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with how to get into the functions that we're going to operate with today. What you do is you start on the bottom and you hit the program escape button, and that gives you this screen, program on main. You hit the enter button. Okay? As I've already said, I've got this set up for 3654. That's what it's saying. So you hit enter. Now it's going to ask you what you want to do. We're going to be operating in the number 2, which is the CV mode. Now we'll just run down my list and I'll tell you what we do, or what I do, in order to set up my locomotives to operate. All right, so we start with CV number 2, and then you press enter, and you enter a value. I've been operating mine with the acceleration of 150. That works really well for this layout. Since this is a switching layout, I am not running long trains in a loop or running any serious main line. My total mainline length is 22 feet, so there's not a lot. So the acceleration, we run at 150. That is CV number 3. I'll put 150 here so that we can remember what we're doing. Now I've cheated a little bit because I wanted to run through this to see what it would work for this scale trains model. It's a little bit different than the Atherns. So for deceleration, which is CV number 4, we're actually going to put in a value of 50. That works really well for however it's geared. All right, the maximum voltage, which is CV number 5, you just press number 5 and hit enter. I use the value of 128. I like that value. It keeps them from being rockets. So we run 128. Like I said, I'm not going to touch the dynamic digital exhaust, but we are going to come down to the independent brakes. Normally I keep it right around 225. However, for this particular model, it needs to be 178. For the CV of 117, I use the value of 178. Then for the train brakes, that's CV 118. I'm going to use a value of 178. Then the turns off start. This to me is an important CV. It's CV 114. This keeps the engine from starting up as soon as you turn your layout on. That has a value of 7. That will keep your engine from starting up when you turn the layout on. The master volume level, I like to keep them relatively quiet, so I'm going to run with the master volume level of 60, and that is CV 128, value of 60. For the air horn, I'm going to run a number 14 on that air horn. That chooses what kind of an air horn it'll be. So for CV 120, I'm going to choose a value of 14. All right, the air horn reverb, this gives it that kind of that echoing effect, and I like that, and I always put it on high. So for CV 233, I'm going to choose 4 for a value, and then for CV 161, put it as 255. And for the bell, I use number 39, but you can choose whatever you want. That is CV 122. I put in a value of 39. All right, we're about done. So for the air horn volume, that's going to be CV 129, and I run all of my units at a value of 70. The type of engine, according to the little sheet that came with the decoder, we want to have a value of 1, and that's for a 645. So for CV 123, we're going to give it a value of 1. The bell volume, I like to keep this pretty quiet because the bell can be annoying at times. So for CV 130, I'm going to give it a value of 40. All right, we're not consisting it, so we don't need any of these CVs. Now this next section is the auto signals. And it's really nice that Soundtrax has this. So you're supposed to blow the horn twice when you go forward, once when you stop, and 3 times when you go backwards. By setting these CVs up, it allows the engine to do it on its own. All right, so for CV 407, we'll set that up with a number 1. CV 408, we'll set that up with a value of 2. And CV 409, we'll set that up with a value of 12. That's going to allow it to do it as soon as you hit the throttle or the engine comes to a stop. So that allows us to do that. Now the rest of this stuff is all if you have F7 functions, which we don't have on this particular engine. So that gives us the setup of how I set up my units to operate within the existing parameters of their decoder. Now, I also like to do function mapping. And function mapping allows the buttons on your controller to do the same thing for each engine. Because there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than you grab an engine and you push a button and you expect a function and it doesn't happen. So I try to have all of my units set up the same way. Now, before we get into that, what's important is setting up CV31 to a value of 16 and CV32 to to a value of 1. This allows you to get into these CVs that have these 1 dots, okay? Now, the F0 comes factory set for your lights, both forward and reverse. F1, factory set as the bell. F2, factory set for the air horn. And then F3 is factory set for the short horn. I leave those all the same. Now, what I like for my F4 is to control the brake. On tsunamis, that's an F11 function. I like the functions that I use all the time to be on what I'll call the first page of functions, which is for a specific number. So there, for the F4, to control that, we want to go to the CV 275 and set that with a value of 4. That now addresses that to the 4 button, okay? My F5 is how I want to turn the engines on. So I go to CV 285 and I set that for a value of 5. Same thing for shutting the engines off. That's an F6 function for me. And I go to 286 and set that as a function of 6. Ditch lights, they're not on this particular unit, so we don't have to worry about that, but I always want any of my ditch lights to operate as an F7 button. Okay, mute comes from the factory as an F8, that's CV 274. I leave that. F9 in some decoders is for the grade crossing. I want that grade crossing as my F9. So I always just go into the CV number 278 and give it a value of 9. That allows all of the buttons to use the same thing for each one of my engines as I'm controlling them. So that's how I set up my CVs and my function mapping for the My Sandersville Railroad. I hope you found this informative. I hope there's at least something you can take away from it. Please like, subscribe, and tune in for the next content. Have a great rest of your day.